Alright guys, this first video back from spring break, we're going to kind of combine the last two factoring techniques that we did right before spring break, and now we're going to do both of those factoring techniques for each problem. Alright, very first factoring technique we did was when we worked with this GCF. So when it says whenever it has steps when factoring, whenever it tells you to factor, you always, and I'll star this, you always want to factor out the GCF. And remember, that means greatest common factor. Alright, you always do that first. Now, if there is no GCF, then you would just move to step 2. Now, you can see for all these ones on this handout, there's always 3 terms. And you're always going to have a quadratic trinomial. So after you factor out the GCF, then you want to factor the quadratic into 2 binomials. So we'll say factor into 2 binomials. And what we mean by that is, to give you an example, this is where we'll always have like x plus times x plus, or x minus times another x minus, or the signs could be mixed, where you have x plus times an x minus. Alright, but on the outside, put in a different color, the GCF is going to be on the outside of these 2 binomials. Alright, so we're going to kind of do both of those factoring techniques. Okay, let's take a look at the first one. Let's move this up. Alright, so it says factor the following expressions completely. Alright, so when we do number 1, we're going to ask ourselves, out of all these numbers, 4, 8, and 96, what's the biggest number that goes into all 3 of those evenly? Alright, you could use your calculator for it. Always start with the smallest number. And the smallest number here is 4. And then ask yourself, does 4 go into 8? Yes, it does. Does 4 go into 96? Well, even if you're not sure if it does, use your calculator. And when you use your calculator, 4 goes into 96. I believe it's, I think it's what, 24 times? So our GCF for this is 4. Now, I don't have an X for the GCF because see how there's no X here? So I'm not going to have an X in a GCF. So I'm going to pull out the 4. Okay, and then I line up the minuses. I keep the same signs. So then I'm asking myself, all right, how many times does 4 go into 4x squared? Well, it's just 1x squared. Okay, how many times does 4 go into negative 8x? Well, that's negative 2x. And then the next part, when you use your calculator, how many times does this 4 go into this 96? As I said, I believe that is 24 times. So we'll put 24. Alright, so we did that first step there. We factored out the GCF. Now, next step, I'll put in a different color. This quadratic trinomial, this is exactly what we did right before the break. I'm going to factor this into 2 binomials. Right, I'm still going to bring down the 4, but the first term is going to be x in each. And then remember we said this is where this is our product, the last number. And then the sum is this negative 2, the middle term. Now, it's real important to remember this from before the break. When the product is negative, think of it, if you multiply 2 numbers and you get a negative, automatically the signs in here are mixed. So I'm going to put plus and minus. So then I'm asking myself, what are 2 numbers that multiply to give me 24, and really they could subtract. I know it says sum, but we're going to make 1 plus 1 minus. Subtract to give me 2, and 6 and 4 work. Now, since 6 is the bigger number, it's going to go with this sign, the negative. So 6 is going to be with the negative, and 4 is going to be here. And remember, my quick check for this is, all right, now I'm saying this is the sum, negative 2. 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2. So that works. That's the sum. And then the product, 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. So that works right there. So that's the answer right there. All right. Let's see here. Let's move to number 2. So for number 2, let's slide it over. Okay, we're looking at those numbers now. 3, the 30, and the 48. And we're asking ourselves, what's the biggest number that goes into these? Again, if I start with this 3, I know 3 goes into this 30, and 3 also goes into 48. So the GCF here is 3. And again, I don't have x with the GCF because there's no x with this 48. So I'm going to factor out a 3. So let's put the 3, put the 3 on the outside. Then we'll line up our terms. I have a minus and a plus. All right, so I divide 3 into 3x squared. I get x squared. For the second term, I ask myself, how many times does 3 go into this, negative 30? And that's negative 10x. Okay, this is a 10. And then 3 divides into 48 16 times. And if you didn't know that, just use a calculator. All right, so that's the first step there. We factored out the GCF. Now, second step, I'm going to do it in a different color. This is where I'm going to factor this x squared minus 10x plus 16 into 2 binomials. Since we start with this x squared, I'm going to start with an x in each of these 2 binomials. All right, now real important, this product here is 16. Since this is positive, that means I'm going to have same sign of whatever the first sign is. So since that first sign's a negative, that means these both are going to be negative. Right? Because remember, if you add 2 negatives, you still get a negative. But if you multiply 2 negatives, you get a positive. Now 16, if you listed all the factors, you would have, what, 1 and 16, 2 and 8, and 4 and 4. So then you're asking yourself, which of these 3 add up to give me this 10? Well, 2 and 8 do. So I put 2, I put 8. And then remember, again, the quick check, negative 2 plus negative 8 is negative 10. That's my sum. Negative 2 times negative 8 is positive 16. That's my product. All right. Let's do one more. Let's just go to number 3. Now, number 3, you can see all the numbers are even, so I'm going to do this one a little bit quicker. My GCF is 2, because 2 goes into everything. So I'm going to pull out the 2. Okay, now these are both pluses, so I bring them down. So 2 goes into 2x squared, just x squared. 2 divides into 30x 15 times, but I have to have an x. Now this you probably need your calculator. 2 goes into 112 56 times. All right, so that's the first step. Second step, I'm going to factor this into 2 binomials. So again, the first term is going to be x in each. Since this product is positive, I go same sign of the first. So since that first sign is a positive, these are both pluses here. So then I have to know my factors of 56. Well, the one that winds up working is 7 and 8. You could list others like 1 and 56, 2 and 28. I'm not sure what else goes into it. But these, 7 and 8, when you add them, it gives you 15. And then 7 times 8 is 56. So we get 7 and we get 8. And that's it right there. All right, so you want to look for your GCF. Then after you factor that out, then factor it into 2 binomials.